So hi everyone, thank you for coming. This is a session for the Early Career Research Network for the OR Society, and our topic is going to be looking at the academic job search. So thinking about the process of finding jobs, how that process works, and any advice in terms of to sort of help improve that application process for you. So I'm Luke Rhodes Leader. I'm a lecturer in management science at Lancaster University. I'm also chair of the Early Career Researcher Network at the moment. So so the Early Career Researcher Network is aimed to be a community of ECRs, where what we're aiming for is a community which will offer peer support in terms of answering questions and hopefully also getting a chance to network and potentially meet collaborators as we go along as well. It's important for us that the point is that it's run by ECRs as well, so that we try to keep things as relevant to an ECR career as possible. So some of the things that we also do are hold events. So we have some training events, and we've got one of those coming up in a few weeks, which I'll mention in a bit. And we also hold some workshops. So we've had a couple of larger events. Most of our events are online, but we've had a few larger events as well in person. We are a special interest group of the OR Society. So if you go to the OR Society and look for the Early Career Researchers Network, you'll be able to get yourself on the mailing list for that. So you'll find out more about these events as they come up and as we plan them. We also have a group on LinkedIn, which we use to advertise the events, but also point out things which might be of interest more generally to the ECR network. And there's also, you can join the OR Society Researcher Database, which is another way of connecting with other people, whether that's industry people or other researchers as well. So the past events that we've had a 2-day workshop at OR65 or in the 2 days before OR65. That was a really good event where we covered quite a lot of different topics. It was very well attended as well, which was great. We've also had a webinar around career breaks, which was a joint event with Warren. And we've had a training session in terms of how to grow into an effective and fun lecturer, which was a really good session too. In terms of the events that we're planning after this, we've got a workshop in a couple of weeks, which will be in person on the 25th of July in Birmingham. So that's looking at some of the personal development skills and sort of softer skills of the profession and being an academic. We're planning a panel session at OR66, which will look at working with industry, and we've got a few academics who are going to come and share their experiences in terms of working with industry. And we're planning a webinar in the autumn, more similar to this event, but we haven't confirmed the topic yet, and we will confirm that as we go, or as we get closer to the time. So there's now quite a large organising committee. So there's me, there's Elizabeth Williams at Cardiff, CMAC, Zara and Richlove are our event secretaries. Warwick, Bath and King's College London. Laura Boyle is a past chair from Queen's University Belfast. We've also got Amelia at UCL and Sophie and Carol from the OR Society, who help us with all the various aspects in terms of actually organising things properly. So we have quite a nice range at the moment. We've got some PhD students, we've got some postdocs, and we've got some lecturers. If you would like to be involved in any of this, we would be very keen to have you, and you can contact me or contact Carol, and we would happily talk to you or discuss with you about the best ways to get involved. So today we've got 3 speakers. We've got Zella King, who is a health data scientist at the Clinical Operational Research Unit at UCL. We've got Kerem Akartunali, who is a professor in the Department of Management Science at Strathclyde Business School. And we've got Omid Maghazeh, who's an assistant professor at the University of Bath School of Management. And hopefully they're different stages of their careers, different job titles, and so hopefully they'll be able to offer different perspectives on this process as we go. So I'm looking forward to hearing more of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to have each speaker will give a short talk, 15 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A followed by that, or after each speaker, and then at the end we'll be able to have a more general Q&A towards the end as well. You can put the questions in the chat. That would be great. If when we come to the Q&A, you want to actually unmute or raise your hand and then unmute and ask the question as well, that would be great as well, rather than me just asking the questions, because we're not a huge group. It's perfectly feasible for you to ask the questions yourselves. Okay, so without further ado, I will move on to our first speaker. So let me just stop sharing there. And so our first speaker is going to be Zella King, who has had a wide-ranging experience in academia, and so I'm going to pass on to her to tell us more about it.
Thanks, Luke, and hi everyone. Can you see my slides and hear me okay? Yeah, great. Yes. So some reflections from a meandering career. I'm not really going to speak about the traditional academic process. I'm just going to perhaps subvert it a little bit and talk about how I have got the jobs that I've got and what has led up to the point where I've been offered a job, because it's relatively rare in my case that I've actually followed a traditional process, and I think that may be more common than sometimes people give credit for. So I'm at the Clinical Operational Research Unit at UCL, as Luke said, and I've been an embedded researcher at University College London Hospital for 4 years, and we've developed a very strong relationship there with them, doing a combination of data science and operational research, which we're quite sort of pleased to be able to reflect on. I'm not really going to talk about that today, though. I'm going to talk about sort of how I got here. So yeah, meandering career, just give you a sense of where I've come from. So I began my career as a consultant for Accenture, and then I sort of took a bit of a side swipe and went to investment banking for Schroders. And then after sort of 5 years of graduate careers, I did a PhD, which was in psychology, and I was kind of looking at actually careers and what's in people's kind of minds when, after 5 years of being a graduate myself in these corporate environments, I didn't really feel like I had a career in any sense that I felt ownership of. And so that was, I think I have this kind of joke that most social scientists research their own problems, and that was certainly the case for me. I went up and studied occupational psychology and looked at career self-management. Then from there, I had a couple of different academic jobs. I had a postdoc at King's College London, and then I had quite a long stint in the faculty at the University of Reading in the business school. I kind of got a bit jaded, I guess, with academia, and left in about 2014 and co-founded a business called Personal Boardroom. And then you can see there's a fork there where I could have carried on doing that work, but around that time, my mum passed away, and I had one of those kind of life evaluation moments where I thought, what am I doing? And what do I want to be doing? And gradually then did another kind of meander towards what I do now, which is I'm now back in academia. I'm a postdoc again, and I'm a health data scientist. So I want to talk about some reflections from that sort of wavy journey. The first one really relates to the job that I took at that fork. So I'd been doing this work with training. It was basically a training company, the Personal Boardroom. I'll speak a bit more about it in a moment. But we were working with kind of people inside big corporates, and they generally had, sort of plenty of opportunities available to them. And in the process of losing my mum, I kind of reflected on the health system, which I'd never really, thankfully, had to have much to do with, and thought actually there's many more interesting and difficult problems here in healthcare in an aging society. So I want to go off in that direction. So I didn't really know how to do that, and what I would describe as a series of experiments where I kind of followed opportunities that led to things that sounded interesting. And one of the places I ended up at was doing some part-time work for a social enterprise in Barking and Dagenham in East London called Care City, where they were trying to rethink the idea of healthy aging, and they were trying to bring together the local NHS organisations with social care and think about sort of solving population health problems from a joined up perspective. I actually took a job that I was overqualified for, but it was really useful for a couple of different reasons. One was that I got some experience of the healthcare world and social care and the things that I sort of said that I was interested in. And the other was I met a few people, and one of the people I was sort of randomly introduced to was by someone at Care City was Professor Sonia Crowe, who is now my boss, and I've been working with Sonia for 4 years. But I mention this particularly because I had no idea then that I was interested in operational research or that I wanted to go back into academia necessarily. So Sonia was just someone who I was introduced to because a mutual contact thought we would get on and be interested in what each other were doing. So I came to meet Sonia and kind of enjoyed the chat. Didn't really think anything more of it. And then some months after that, I decided I would do a master's in health data science. I started at UCL. And I was looking for a dissertation project, and having had an accident at Spelman Hospital in the first term of my master's, I remembered Sonia's work, and I thought, oh, she's actually doing something quite interesting. And I wonder if there's anything there. She's at UCL. I'm doing my master's in a different bit of UCL, so I went back to see her. And to cut a long story short, that going back to see Sonia led to me starting to work with her and having the job that I have now. So my first kind of reflection really is that I took a weird sidestep at a point in my career when I was at a bit of a junction, and I learned about the NHS, and I think I gained a lot of clarity about what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. And I met Sonia, but it was very much, I met Sonia because I followed up when someone offered to introduce me to someone. I connected with her positively. I followed up with Sonia after I'd met her, and therefore I felt comfortable to reapproach her when I was then back at UCL doing my master's, and kind of thought maybe she might have an interesting opportunity. But I really, that was very speculative, and I think there was some good fortune, and I made the most of it. So this is my second point really, is that in this kind of meandering career, I've had 5 postdoc positions. The one at King's College London was a postdoc, and then at UCL I've had 4. The initial one that Sonia offered me, then I went off to work in a different part of UCL, and then since then I've been back in the Coru, the unit where I am now, each time sort of a contract rolling on year by year. So it's contingent work. It's not like the job security that maybe you're looking for if you're looking for a faculty post, and it's kind of conscious decision on my part, given the stage of my career that I'm at and the experience that I've had. I'm really happy with postdoc work, and I don't want to, that's a decision that I've made. But I think relevant to this conversation is that only in one of those cases have I put myself through a formal application process where a job was advertised. That was my job at the University of Reading. And then I did the traditional thing of, filling a job in an application form, an interview, did a presentation, and that, might be the conventional way of getting an academic job. And of course, they look at all of the academic things that, others will probably speak of, like publication record and, what teaching experience you've got and so on. But the point here, I think, is that in the work that I've done, the reason I've ended up being offered postdoctoral contracts is because I have been able to show that I could engage well with industry. So in the first case, while I was doing my PhD, my supervisor, a guy called Professor David Guest, he had good contacts into industry himself, including an organization called the Chartered Institute of Personal Development. And I did some sort of work while a PhD student for them, some kind of light touch consulting. And then he could see that I was like a useful person. So he pitched to this institute to then fund me for a year's postdoc. So it was very much him spotting an opportunity with a person and then putting the funding together to make that happen. And the same thing has happened with Koru now and UCL, where the first position I took with Sonia Crow was because there was a postdoc in this role and he left, so she had a vacancy. So in that sense, yes, there was a formal vacancy and I filled it. I then moved on to someone else's project, or again there was a vacancy. But since then, the two most recent postdoc contracts have been created sort of collaboratively with Sonia and other colleagues here and with the hospital to kind of propose to them some joint kind of sort of mutually beneficial. It's research, but we're also doing something very practical and applied in the hospital. And again, it's because I've shown that I can be a useful person, that I can build relationships, and these things kind of do create opportunities. If you can show you're useful, you stay, you commit and do what you say you're going to do, you produce good work, people respect that, and they, where they can, create funding. I know it's a tricky world to get funding in, but you're more likely to have an opportunity like that open up if you can demonstrate those things. And then the third thing I just wanted to say was that my postdoc contracts have come about because of people that I knew. They weren't strangers. They were, in one case, it was my PhD supervisor. In one case, it was, well, I guess Sonia was a stranger originally, but I had sort of worked to get to know her a bit. So it's often, I think, we think about networking and we think about building relationships with with people we don't know. And yes, there are lots of good ways to do that, like on LinkedIn, but actually people you already know may be way more helpful and useful to you than you perhaps have given credit for. So I mentioned the business that I went off and co-founded, Personal Boardroom, and that came from while I was in academia at the University of Reading. I did quite a bit of thinking about networks and what the academic literature said about networks, and wasn't particularly a fan of networking, but thought there was actually lots of very interesting stuff about how networks are structured and what's an advantageous network and what is a constrained one. So I wanted to take some of that and apply it into kind of the real world. So that's what I did with my co-founder. We came up with the idea, the metaphor of asking people who is in your personal boardroom, as a way of thinking about who are you surrounding with yourself with, who can really help you succeed. And we developed a sort of framework for helping people think about that, which I'll just show here to make a point. Obviously, this is not the opportunity to talk through the detail, but we kind of said, in a personal boardroom, you might think of different people that you already know. They could be family members, it could be your PhD supervisor, it could be a colleague, it could be someone you met at a conference. Those people can play different roles for you. And we sort of found that by making it more granular like this, it actually really helps people think about what different types of help you might need from your network and who to ask for it and how to ask for other people to sort of, whether it's to introduce you to someone, whether it's to give you feedback on a job application. I would call that a challenger, someone who gives you who sort of helps you sort of prepare for something and rehearse a presentation. That would be a challenger. someone who's got some expertise that you might be keen to develop, that would be an expert. But the one I just want to emphasize here, which I think is really crucial to the job search process, is the navigator. So a navigator is someone who can help you understand a world that you're wanting to move into. I feel like you're much more likely to get a job if you spent time getting to know the place that you're applying to as best you can from the outside. And if you're lucky, you'll meet people in the course of, you know, your PhD studies or whatever you're doing, that will allow you to go and sort of chat and find out what places are like, find out what kind of people are looking for, what it's like to work there, all of those kind of things. Those are really good navigator conversations. And in the rest of this session, I would really encourage you to sort of think through whatever direction you want to head in, who can help you navigate that world and help you understand it and help you understand what you need to do to fit yourself into that world. So yeah, there are my contact details. Unfortunately, I can't stay for the panel session at the end, but I'm very happy to take some questions now, and or if you want to follow up, then that's how to find me at UCL.
That was great. Thank you very much, Sarah. That was very interesting. Very interesting perspectives on that. So thank you. Are there any questions at the moment from any of the attendees? Okay, so I'll start off with one. Oh, I have got one actually. So got one from Eve. She says, really interesting, thanks. It looks like you've taken several big leaps into new paths several times in your career. What advice would you give someone considering a similar leap into a new career? Yeah,
that's a really good question, Eve. I think that whilst they seem like a leap, they're actually little steps. So the most effective times anyway, when I took a bit of swerve, was when I did the navigating thing that I was just talking about. I gradually acquired some experience and insight into the new direction while not completely letting go of the old one. And we quite often think about career changes as being sort of like quite sudden. But you're unlikely to be offered a job in something very new if you don't have any track record. So finding whether it's doing some sort of voluntary work. At one point I did some volunteer data science work for a charity. Whether it's just doing a side project where you demonstrate that your interest in something. If you happen to be the sort of person who writes code, you know, then putting your own project up on GitHub or something to show what modeling you've done or what you're interested in, things like that. Just they edge you towards building relationships and building understanding and experience in the field you want to move in. So that would be my advice. I have done it the very abrupt way as well, and I wouldn't recommend that because I think I ended up doing something I wasn't really suited to when I made a big leap.
Great, thank you for that. So I have a question as well, and you're talking about having people who you already know and how helpful that can be. Do you have any advice in terms of how best to, or how actively or not actively you should go about creating that personal boardroom?
Yeah, another very good question. So I'm not a fan. I hate the idea of networking, like I think a lot of people do. So I am not someone who really thrives at the prospect of going to the networking events that always happen at conferences and things. I'd much rather chat with someone after they've given a talk, or make sure I ask a question in a talk so that then I've got an opening with someone. So it's a kind of networking, but it's just it's a bit less sort of it's quite cold and self-serving when you just march up to someone, I think, in a room. In terms of thing I wish I was better at, but I'm not, is following up with people. Just if you see something interesting and sending a note to someone saying, I saw this, it made me think of you. So that's quite easy with people you see a lot. But if you've met interesting people in the past at conferences, if you go back to the same place or you go back to the same conference, they're not there, but you remember them from last time, just sort of follow-ups like that, I think just keep a relationship fresh, or at least in someone's mind, so that when you do want to go back maybe and ask someone for something, then you're sort of, you've put something in before you ask for something back. There's a question from Pooja.
Thanks.
Yes. Hi, Zilla. First of all, thank you so much for such an interesting talk. Being someone who has worked in industry as well as in academia for some time, I could totally relate to what you were, mentioning, and the insights that you drew from your career journey. I had one question about the search for an academic position. Like, there are obviously some questions around the traditional experience you have had in academia, like publications or teaching experience. So how did you handle those questions when coming from an industry background and, applying for an academic position?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess I had to apply for my PhD without any prior, I had to sort of dig out my undergraduate dissertation and sort of brush it off and present that. But then during the course of my PhD, I tried to get funding to go to some conferences. I tried to think about what papers would come out of my PhD. I think there's a good supervisor will be working with you on that. So by the time you come to present yourself in your first academic position, you've got something, even so papers, work in progress, and even having submitted and been accepted to conferences is a really good start. So and again, taking up any opportunities to do teaching, it's distraction if you're at the PhD stage, but it is it's what institutions are going to be looking for. People who hire you are going to look for someone who, is this person going to get the research done if you're a postdoc? Is this person going to get the teaching done if you're a faculty member, or on sort of teaching staff, or some combination of those? Can they manage their time? Can they do admin? So anything that you can show that you've done. I mean, being part of an interest group like this is really good, but anything you can show where you can show initiative, you can show organization, those are boxes that are ticked alongside the publications and whatever academic track record you might have.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. That really helps.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Zella? Okay, so thank you very much, Zella. That was really interesting perspective and very helpful. So thank you very much for
sure. I'm sorry I can't stay around to hear what my colleagues have to say, but I do follow up if you like.
Great, thank you very much, Zella. So we'll move on then to Karen. So Karen is a professor at the Strathclyde Business School, and I shall let him talk about his perspective on this.
Yep. Thanks, Luke. So I haven't prepared any slides, so I'll actually thank Zela first of all, because she covered a big ground, so I don't need to cover, so that helps me. So just give you basically I thought I'll give you a quick background of myself, my journey a bit, but also maybe the perspective from the other side. So when somebody's hiring, what they look for, etc. So I think I'll more focus on that, because I've been in a number of panels, including postdocs and lecturers or senior lecturers, etc. So I started my journey back in Turkey. So when I basically finished my undergrad, I moved to the US, to Wisconsin-Madison, to do my PhD. And after finishing it 2007, so I basically was thinking, I wasn't fully sure, to be honest, between academic jobs and non-academic jobs. So I applied to a number of jobs in both basically categories. So actually, can I see a quick check? Can I do a quick check? In the chat, can you just type in 1 if you are primarily interested in academic jobs, and 2 if you are primarily interested in non-academic jobs? And if you are not sure, don't type in anything. Just type in 1 for academic and 2 non-academic, so I get a bit of a sense of the room so we are in. Okay. All right. Looks like we are primarily focused on academics. All right. Okay, good. Thank you. That was good. That's useful to me. So basically, back to my journey after finishing my PhD in 2007. So I decided to have a bit of a round the world trip. So I moved to do a postdoc in Australia at University of Melbourne. So how did I find it? Obviously, Zella mentioned personal connections. That's obviously helps. Even if you are applying to jobs, like I did a bit, not en masse, but I applied to hand-selected jobs. So I think one of the things maybe I highlight there is just think about your interest, what you would like to do, but also don't see it as like it's a, like a deadly decision. Because if you do have, say, a postdoc for 2 years and you figure out, that's not the area you are interested in, well, you give it a try, you gain experience. So it's all, after all, very useful to you. So don't approach it negatively, but give it a good thought, what you would like to do, and give it a try. So after doing a postdoc 2 years, and my postdoc was actually a bit of an applied research project. So it was with University of Melbourne, Monash University, and also a company called Constraint Technologies International. So it was basically a company, software company, just building customized software for airlines. So their primary customer was Qantas, Australian Airlines, but they work with Singapore Airlines, many other airlines, especially in the Asia Pacific space. So that project, basically that job, even though I applied to it by finding it and then thinking, oh, this is actually a very interesting project, I'd like to apply something different, do some different application area than my PhD, which was quite theoretical, and it was in lot sizing production planning. So I basically got the job essentially, even though I just applied like everyone else, it wasn't a personal connection. My supervisor was known to the basically lead of the project, so that obviously helped a lot. So that's one of the things. Again, Zella mentioned these connections help you, and I basically want to highlight that again. So if you can find that connection, even though you don't talk to the person, like, oh, you go straight to them without applying, etc. You need to just still, I think that connection always helps. Now, after finishing the postdoc, I was more keen on the academic direction. So then I basically started looking for jobs. And even though I was in Australia, and then I did a bit of a round the world tour, but I said, okay, I'll just come a bit closer to home, right? So I said, I'll look for somewhere around maybe Europe, maybe East Coast US, because I obviously did my PhD there, so I was familiar there as well. So then I started for looking jobs, and then I ended up just basically in Strathclyde, a bit, I would say, by chance, because you have a window to find a job, and during that window, sometimes you have I would say, a peak season. That's the way I would describe it. So you will have so many jobs, so you can easily choose from. Sometimes you have a bit of a dry season where things are a bit, far and in between. So in this case, I basically was looking for jobs. I was more limiting my geographical area, but then, you know, I wanted to just find a lecturer, assistant professor type of, basically start of academic career type of job. So that's the way I ended up here. So, and this time actually I didn't have a personal connection. So that's the other thing I wanted to highlight. And then of course that comes back to what Zela highlighted as well. You know, a lot of times your publications make the big difference. So that's obviously the thing to highlight there. But also, you know, like your background, like for example, having a PhD from Wisconsin, having taught there, having taught in Melbourne. Again, you know, Zela noted these things as well. So, you know, like having some teaching experience, even though it's quite disruptive to your PhD, comes very useful for academic careers, but also if you change your mind in a few years and you want to go industry, it helps you to show that, you know, you are quite easy to just talk in front of people. So like I actually had a few shortlisted, you know, shortlistings in the US for some positions like at IBM Research and some consulting companies, etc. And a good number of times when I talk to the interviewers, they mentioned to me that, okay, I didn't just do research and then, yes, I did publish. So that's obviously very good for them to be aware of. But also I was actually teaching quite a bit at Wisconsin-Madison. So that, you know, they saw that as a big positive. And similarly, like later when I came to Strathclyde, settle in, etc., that's one of the things again came up. Like, you know, they said, you know, okay, you taught in Wisconsin, you taught at Melbourne. So we didn't have any, you know, like second thoughts about can you deliver teaching, because obviously even though you are coming in academic and you are looking for primarily for research, you don't want someone, you know, from an employer point of view who is very weak in teaching. So again, so I basically will highlight that. So if you get any opportunities to teach, even if it's for like a few semesters, you know, maybe 1 or 2 classes, that will definitely make your CV stronger in academia as well as outside of academia. Now, I think for outside of academia, I will also briefly mention, so obviously, you know, your PhD project might have a very theoretical nature. Maybe it involves some company. So it really depends on your setting. Sometimes you find a company, your supervisors throw some messy problem at you and they tell you, oh, maybe you should go talk to airlines and then figure out, make some connection, etc. Maybe that's not a, you know, fun thing to do for you. But those experiences come in handy, particularly for industrial jobs. But again, with the academia, I mean, I've seen in the last 15 years how it changed. 15 years ago, I would say your research was pretty much the major, you know, like thing to, you know, like to decision factor. Whereas nowadays, you might also have a lot of, say, for example, KE experience, and then you can bring that on the table. So there's obviously that to highlight. Now, I think now I've been almost 15 years now, Strathclyde, and I've been in a good number of panels. I mean, I hired myself postdocs. We hired a number of, like say, lecturers or senior lecturers, or even readers, you know, like, you know, higher level. And I've been in, you know, all these different, basically, panels. And also I actually a couple of times was an external assessor for other universities. So in the UK as well as elsewhere, so in Europe. So one of the, obviously you already know, like the key criteria to focus on is the research and then obviously publications. So that's the, you know, like the a big decision criteria. But with the academia having changed quite a bit in the last 15 years, and there are many different routes available to you. I mean, I have some colleagues who started just like me as an academic, and then after a while they said, okay, I'm much more capable, you know, working with companies, so I'm gonna go into a KE track. So there, I think keeping these opportunities, these paths open to you is a good thing. And then, you know, you can actually, you know, that's why, you know, when you are being hired It's not just, oh, I don't have enough papers, hence I won't get a job, is not necessarily correct in today's environment. Now, what else to mention? So even like obviously again, Zella mentioned that, like having a personal connection to a place makes a big difference. So if you do have any personal connection to somewhere you are applying, try to talk to these people, even if for 10, 15 minutes over the phone will help you a lot, because you want to figure out what they are looking for. Now, for jobs like postdocs, you will see more specific, criteria. So for example, I was hiring for a postdoc in a project in the production planning environment, and then I hired for another project in basically vessel marine scheduling. And when I was hiring for these type of postdocs, I have a limited time. It's a fixed term position, say 2 years, 15 months, 18 months, 3 years, whatever, right? So then I really look for the specific experience. So if you come to me with, say, some crew scheduling experience and apply to this, marine scheduling problem, you are a very attractive candidate to me. But if you come with, I don't know, some graph theory experience, you are still somehow attractive, but not as much. So that's why I think I would like to split the two, like postdoctoral type of jobs where you work in a specific project from the more general jobs like lecturer, senior lecturer, etc. Now, regular academic track. Now, for regular academic track, the key thing is, I think you need to consider is, how do I fit into a specific department or school or faculty, etc. So for example, the department you are going to, say, for example, I'm an optimization person. If I'm moving tomorrow to a department, I'll look for some kind of optimization group or colleagues I might work with. Or I might find a department which is really looking for growth in optimization area. But then those things are not necessarily obvious if you do not have a personal connection. I mean, you should do your research always. You should go, explore the department. Even if you don't have a personal connection, you should try to understand from the departments, as well as even universities. Say, a lot of universities these days have a strategy, a vision, etc., for the next 10 years, 20 years, etc. So you might want to look into those things to familiarize yourself, because when it comes to an interview, it's good that you show you have some knowledge about the institution itself. This is in particular important for academic jobs, not necessarily for a postdoctoral job. For a postdoctoral job, your primary concern is the project itself. Try to learn as much as you can about the specific project. What's the project about? What do they look for? Do they look for, say, theoretical computer scientists, or they look for some programmers or someone to implement, or someone maybe with some soft skills, now maybe they come from some, like soft OR direction. So whatever the specific skills are looked for. Whereas for academic jobs, even when the academic job says we prefer candidates from, say, simulation area, they never will limit it. I wouldn't say maybe never, maybe that's a bit of a strong statement, but almost never limit it to just, say, that area. They will always be open if you come as a strong candidate, and if you can actually fit into that department, they will always look, consider you as a potential new member of the department. So I think just to kind of sum up, and then also I think maybe to also give a bit of the international perspective, because obviously I moved around quite a bit. So like one of the things that was quite strikingly different for me when I came for an interview to the UK was because I was so used to the American way of doing things. I mean, in UK, the interviews are not exhaustive, let's say it that way. I mean, there might be maybe a couple of sessions, maybe you meet different, people individually, etc. But it's not like they say, for example, in the US, a lot of the universities will basically book you for 2 full days. So from one day, 8:30 a.m. until the next day, 5 p.m., you will be pretty much constantly busy, going from one person to another, giving a seminar to the department, giving another seminar to another closely associated department, talking to the dean, talking to this and that, going to dinner with some vice deans, etc., etc. So it's very, very exhausting. Versus like in the UK, a lot of times the process is much simpler. So you have maybe a department, obviously, presentation. Maybe you have a meeting or two with some people in the department. For example, you are from the simulation group or software group, then you meet those people specifically. So then they want to get a bit more sense of what you might be doing with them. So how you might work with them, collaborate with them. But, nothing too intense, shall we say. So other than that, just to sum up, I think just to make the distinction between the specific, projects like postdoc project versus just more general academic jobs. And even those academic jobs, when they are specified as, a preferred area, desired area, always keep in mind that if you actually come to the table with strong, basic background, you will always be a viable candidate, even if you are not in that specific area. So I think I'll just stop talking. I don't like to listen to myself too much. So if there are any questions, I'll happily take them.
Thanks, Karim. That was very interesting. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Oh, Sarah,
I think there's
go for it.
question. Mm-hmm. So how important are non-research skills such as communication and management in academic success? That's a very good question. So, I mean, even, obviously you will have a lot of criteria, essential criteria, desired criteria. You will have these almost boring, personal specifications when you apply to jobs. So I wouldn't worry about them too much. Just in generally, I would try to identify what are the important things. But general skills like communication or just management is always a bit of a tricky one, because if you just coming out of PhD, yes, you have managed your PhD, fine. You did obviously some time management. You manage that project yourself. It's not an easy task, as we all know, but it's still quite hard to show as a skill. Whereas communication, you will essentially show it in the, in your interviews, because obviously you will talk to people. So even how you actually read body language of the other people, or how you interact with them, how you do even a little bit things like gestures, etc. So those things obviously give some positive, negative signs. I wouldn't necessarily say they will be, unless you are on a very extreme end, they will be a deal breaker. But if there are two similar candidates, so you might be picked just because somebody has more stronger communication skills. So there's obviously that interaction coming into play. So yes, so it's important. I wouldn't say very important, but certainly important. So if you can develop yourself in those until you start looking for jobs, that would help.
Thanks, Karim. Are there any other questions for Karim?
Elizabeth,
Sorry.
Hi.
It's
yes,
hard to see.
That's okay. Thank you for a great talk. You mentioned about some jobs look for a specific focus. So, for example, simulation. If that's, say, not in your remit at all, is it best to mention the fact that actually you're not in that area in a cover letter, or
yes, that's
try
correct.
and
Yes.
dance around the fact that it's not your field?
Don't pretend you have some funny long relation to simulation or something. No, you don't do that. But I think the important thing is, to just evaluate the department or school itself, would you fit in there? You know, if you are, let's say I'm a software person and there's a simulation job, I can't really relate myself to that simulation job. But if I see a department which has some group of software, I might just at least see myself fitting into that department. Unless the job says, and that happens very, very rarely, I don't see it that common, that we really want just this, nothing else, unless it just tells you not to apply, you can always, you know, consider that. But just make that assessment, do I fit into this department? Or would I be just a loner, look kind of a bizarre, awkward in this place? So
Thank you.
no problem. What advice would you give to someone who is looking to move geographies? Well, again, I think that's a good question. So, well, I think, again, you know, like, well, I come back to Zela's point of just basically connections help because, you know, like, obviously you can get introduced to someone easier. There's that. But they are not necessary. I think the question is for you to ask yourself is, and you will be asked about it, why do you want to move to that geography? I mean, if I'm coming from Australia to Scotland, people were a bit like kind of funny about it. I mean, why do you leave Australia, a very sunny country, and come to this, you know, not so great weather? Shall we put it in the, you know, simple terms? Yeah, I mean, you know, people just get curious about it. So you need to have a good reason about it. I mean, think about that, why you actually want to move geographies. I think one of the things to keep in mind, as an academic, you are probably in the most flexible job, or one of the most flexible jobs in the world. You can move anywhere, so don't limit yourself, oh, I'm just stuck in UK or Europe or whatever. You are not. You can easily, if you say, oh, I found this job in Australia, why not? You might move. I found this in China, why not? You can do, because you have these very tangible things with you, such as papers, such as grants, etc., right? So you can obviously carry those with you easily. So your CV works everywhere. So that's your big advantage. So if you want to explore a different geographic area, definitely that's, you know, it's a possibility for you. So don't be just afraid of it, but ask yourself, why would you like to do that change? Because you will be very, very likely asked about it anyway. So, and if you have a bit of a nonsense answer, obviously that doesn't look good. Okay, no problem. Any other questions?
I have one more question, actually.
Yeah, go for it.
What is the role of mentor? I know that good advice is always welcome and important, but in terms of official progress in academic career, what is the role of mentor?
I think it really depends on the institution itself. I mean, how much of a culture is there of mentorship? I mean, because I don't want to limit myself just to Strathclyde, because obviously I've seen it in different places. You know, I've been externally examiner in other places. I've been assessor in the other universities, etc. So I've seen it quite a bit varying. In some places, there is a good culture of mentorship, and mentor doesn't necessarily have to be someone from your area. For example, when I started my career, I mean, my mentor was pretty much from the soft operations management innovation space, which I have nothing to do with. I'm more like a mathematical optimization guy, right? So it's just completely irrelevant in that. But still, that mentor was quite helpful to show me the ways around. You know, like, obviously I was new in the university, in addition to being new in the, like Scotland/UK. So the mentor was, like very, very helpful to just showing me just the ways, even simple things like, I come here, okay, I learn about, okay, there's some, organization called EPSRC. What's EPSRC about? I don't know, because I'm just new. Sure, I can read things online, obviously I'll do my homework, but a lot of times the mentor is very, very helpful to show you, to lead you to just basically to potential opportunities and to find your way easier throughout your career, especially when you are new. right? So that's just quite helpful at this step, but that's a good point. Okay.
Okay, thanks very much, Karen.
Thanks, Luke.
So we'll move on to Omid now. So Omid is a assistant professor and lecturer at the University of Bath School of Management. So I'll pass over to Karen. Sorry, to Omid.
Hi everyone. So maybe I just I've prepared a couple of slides, if you don't mind to me sharing. All right, let's see. Just gonna go through. I hope I'm not gonna do something clumsy. So let's see. So are you able to see? Okay, just
Yeah, I can see those.
But is this the presenter view, or it's like a more of a proper view?
It's just the standard
no.
PowerPoint.
Okay, so I should change that probably, right? Technology. Okay. I'm gonna stop sharing now. You still can see my okay.
Yeah, if you stop sharing and share again, it should be okay.
Yeah. I'm just gonna find out how can I stop share again, because apparently that also does not exist anymore. Apologies. Is this here? No.
I might be able to stop you sharing.
If you do that, then I can probably swap my screen.
Okay.
Okay. There we go. Try it again. So maybe this screen should be working, not this one. This one. But maybe now you can see my. How about now?
Can see that. Great.
Works. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Brilliant. So, hi everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm a little bit stressed being after Zela and Karim, because they've already touched upon many of the things that I had in mind to share with you. But anyway, some of them may sound repetitive, so you might find out those that are sort of a repetition. Probably they are more important than a few things that I am hoping I would be able to add a little bit of more insights, if I can, to such great presentations and great talks. All right, move on. I'm just going to probably start with a little bit of a highlight that who am I? Like a heads up, I'm a kind of coming from more of an empirical research operations management sort of view. I've been in the job market of, say, operations management from an empirical point of view. I don't know to what extent it's different from the OR community, but probably a big part of it overlaps. So yeah, here I am. I was born in Iran. I did my undergrad in industrial engineering. So background-wise, I'm not a million miles away from OR. We had a ton of OR statistics, mathematical modeling, all of those things, management science during my undergrad in Iran, and then I moved to Italy, did my PhD, sorry, that was too early. I did my Master of Science at Politecnico di Milano in Management Engineering. So I started to move away a little bit from the OR, but still my heart was beating for all of those mathematical models. So here is my a picture when I was back in Iran. I was visiting a plant. I always had this passion to go to companies, to visit the plants, etc. So I just wanted to show one example. That's why. And then I graduated in 2015 at Politecnico di Milano. Then I moved to Switzerland. I did my PhD at the Chair of Production and Operations Management at ETH Zurich. My doctoral dissertation was entitled Drones in Manufacturing, Opportunities and Challenges. It was a fairly, I would say, futuristic topic for my PhD. At the time, drones were kind of at the rise, and studying it empirically from an operations management point of view was quite a bold move, but I did it. So here is a picture of me graduating in May 2021. Then while I was doing my PhD, in 2019, right before COVID, I was super lucky. I managed to do an exchange at the University of Bath. I've worked with Professor Mike Lewis at the time for 6 months. It was a tremendously great experience that I had. Then, so yeah, that's a kind of a highlight, which I would build upon it a little bit later. Then I was employed as a postdoc in the same chair that I did my PhD at ETH Zurich. Here is one of the very last pictures, group photos that we had with my former team. We went actually to Italy. It's a visit that we had in Maserati in a plant somewhere close to Modena. And then I started my assistant professor and lecturer position at the University of Bath. It started July last year. Almost becoming 1 year me moved here, so it scares me. So yeah, it's crazy how time flies. So here I am at the moment at the University of Bath. So you might wonder, like, okay, he did his exchange in a place now that he's currently employed. So I think it already indicates the power of network relationships, something that was heavily resonated and echoed by the other two great speakers, right? So let's move on. I'll go back to this a little bit more further. My research, I don't want to talk too much about my research because you might say, like, why? But maybe just for the sake of introduction, here is some of the things that I have done. I've worked with companies heavily. Here is one example. There is a few YouTube videos. Again, YouTube videos for you being in the job market. You know, these are some of the things that I will again pick up on these things that I'm talking. I'm not talking necessarily about my research. I'm talking about some of the things that I have done that maybe in one way or another contributed to me navigating in the job market. My PhD, again, drones in manufacturing. One of the companies that I've worked with was Geberit, that is a sanitary manufacturer of sanitary products and systems. Well, in a nutshell, people call it toilet industry. So yeah, here it's because my colleagues also put a toilet on my graduation hat, and interestingly, the first paper that I published, they called it the toilet paper. So that's a bit of one of the projects that I had. Then I moved from the toilet industry to IKEA. We worked with Verity, that was a Swiss-based drone manufacturer of fully autonomous drone systems. And then we managed to basically carry out a case study with them, seeing how drones are being used, what are the dynamics, and why actually they are really, IKEA is scaling drones in their facilities. Here is an example of drones basically flying in the warehouses. Again, this is a disclaimer, totally unrelated to you navigating the job market, but it's a bit of a cool video. So I said, like, probably for a few seconds, I just take your time. Anyway, here is a few examples of my research. I published in mostly empirical, I would say, OM outlets, Journal of Operations Management. Then I pivot my work into a practitioner-oriented journal, MIT Sloan Management Review. We've sort of published in that space something to get across our practical points to a broader community. Here we go. I'm gonna probably summarize my 3 key lessons for you for your job market. You need to build probably 3 things: network, identity, research identity, and pipeline. And if you look at the abbreviations, probably you can actually come up with the idea of PIN. So in order to pin a job in this market, you need to, from my point of view, importantly, you need to build these 3 things. You need to do other things, apparently, but these are the things that I want to get across in my short talk. Network. It was something that was, again, repeatedly mentioned by the other 2 greatest speakers, that how important it is to have a network, to build relationships, exchange and collaborate where possible, to basically open up wherever you can and whenever you, wherever and whenever you can. So some examples of how we can actually build network: attending summer schools, conferences, exhibitions, wherever, I don't know, paper development workshops, all of those activities are extremely important to sort of get connected with some senior people, some more junior people across the board. You know, you need to have network from different, I would say, people with at different stages of their career. All of them can, in one way or another, actually help you contribute to your success, to land a position in the end. Collaboration with industry, question mark. It's something that is up to you depending on your research and nature of your work. Do you want to have an eye on industry market, positions outside of academia? It's probably depends on what are your strategies to navigate in the job market. Research identity. You need to really master the topic that you're working on, and then you need to demonstrate that you are becoming a domain expert in your field. And more importantly, you need to disseminate and communicate that you are becoming an expert in that area. Just note that towards the end of your PhD, probably you are one of those who know more than anyone else about that specific topic. You're spending years of your time on that. So I would say it's very natural and organic that you become an expert in the field. So be confident, and when you do a good job, you are one of those experts that probably people would just say, oh, okay, if you want to know more about this and that topic, someone has a very fresh mind on that, right? Pipeline. Apparently, it's an academic job market. Inevitably, what matters hugely is actually what you have in your pipeline. You need to demonstrate that you're able, you're passionate to not necessarily to publish in elite journals, but you have a potential, you have the capability, or you have the courage to target those things. So in one way or another, probably you need to have send some of the signals in your pipeline. I'm not putting so much, I'm not putting pressure on you that you need to have publications whatsoever, but just demonstrating it's probably sufficient. Something that Karim was also highlighting was very important was to do due diligence about the job market, where you're applying, the target institutes. Go through the details of the advertised jobs, the characteristics of the profile that they are seeking for. These are all important. And I think wherever you have the opportunity to present your work in progress, your working papers, probably the most important papers in your portfolio that you think can help you navigate in the academic market, go ahead and present it. Don't have the fear of, oh, this is not, it's not a full-blown manuscript, it's still a work in progress. Don't be afraid. Go ahead, present, get a feedback, work on it. So it's a very, I would say, a dynamic process. Final thoughts was an excellent highlight. Again, the other panelists mentioned about the teaching. If you have the opportunity to get involved in teaching activities in one way or another, don't miss the chance. Don't worry about it. As a PhD, if you go to the job market, people normally, I would say they do not expect you having formal teaching experiences, but having some bits and bytes here, participated even in some, I don't know, some workshops, some pedagogical related activities. That's what I did. Actually, I attended at ETH some courses about learning to teach, whatever. Get a certificate, put them as a record in your CV. It doesn't harm, okay? Whenever you have the opportunity to do admin or provide service to the profession, do so. I was involved, I was a co-president at our Scientific Staff Association. I bloody ran a hackathon on my topic. These are all extra work. No one was asking me to be part of that. No one was asking me to run a hackathon. No one was asking me to be part of a search committee in a faculty position at ETH. By the way, that opportunity to be part of the search committee came from my involvement in our Scientific Staff Association. They wanted to have a representative from that association. So I was nominated and I accepted it. It was quite some work, but I was seeing behind the scene how they select the faculty at ETH Zurich. I mean, who is applying, learning through the CVs. That was a great learning opportunity for me to see behind the scene and see how folks actually sort of evaluate the CVs, the profiles, the applications, generally speaking. So this was a serendipity of my involvement from some sort of probably non-related to my research whatsoever. So open up, okay? If you have opportunity to review for journals, do so. Not necessarily you would be invited to review for top tier elite journals, but if you have a chance to some way or another to provide a feedback or review for a paper, do so. You become a better writer, you become a better scholar, better researcher by trying to provide a constructive feedback, developmental feedback to someone else. What if? Just be prepared for some scenarios that may not be your ideal scenarios. Have some backup plans, okay? Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. It's not the end of the world if you don't get a job that you dream on. You can always retry, you can always come back. Even if you go to industry, the door is not entirely shut. There are ways to collaborate with academia. There are ways to find your way again back to academia. It's unlikely. I don't want to give you, I don't know, illusions or I don't know, some hopes that have no ground, but at least to give you some signals that it's not sort of completely out of the blue, right? Just make sure you sign up to the platforms that they advertise jobs. I think in the UK, they just advertise new positions in jobs.ac.uk. There is another platform called Accreditation. There is probably a few other platforms. You know them better than I know probably now. Attend the conferences where they provide the opportunity for job market interviews. Just be physically present helps a lot, okay? People trust you when you are there. Interviewing alongside a conference somewhere would be completely different than someone seeing you as a talking head through a Zoom or Teams or whatsoever. So sadly, even University of Bath, they are more mandating the university to hold most of the interviews online. It's what it is. But if you have the chance, go for it to be present. Again, find ways to present, show your capabilities, be present. Probably it's helps tremendously. One last, try to be yourself in the job market and act normal. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing, so just throw in any questions you may have.
That's great. Thanks very much. I mean, that was really interesting. Really interesting perspectives on that. Do we have any questions for Mohammed?
All right.
Yes, go for it.
What was the most challenging part of transitioning from a postdoc to an assistant? Oh, wow. Great question. How do you balance your research, teaching, and admin responsibilities? I'm assuming your second question relates to my current role. Okay, I'll start with the first question. Something that was probably was a question from the previous talk you asked from Karim about moving geography whatsoever. Okay, one of the challenging things was actually me leaving Switzerland after 10 years. You know, I think this is quite a challenge for academic positions that you inevitably end up changing your location, going to another country whatsoever. It's not easy, you know. It comes with you know, some private decisions in your life. A lot of things undergo, I would say, substantial changes. How you navigate, it's entirely up to you. But for me, that was not an easy, I would say, process, to be honest. So yeah, because you know, you felt like you're settled in a country, probably it's going to be your second home whatsoever, and then all of a sudden you have to leave everything behind. In terms of postdoc, one thing, just bear in mind, I remember when I was in the job market, my professor was telling me, listen, Omid, being a postdoc in the same institute that you did your PhD sometimes may not be a great plus in your CV. This is something that I don't know, at least in the OM job market, it's I've been told that this can be a case unless you have a very good reason that why you are staying in the school that you have done your PhD. for instance, if you have, I don't know, your supervisor is a superstar, it's a very, I would say, easy justification that I stayed there because I was working with X, you know. Your institute, I mean, like, I don't know if it's somewhere that you can again justify that I stayed there because of any reason. Yeah. So for me, that was a kind of a challenge because yes, my supervisor was superstar, but sometimes you need to sort of demonstrate that you are an independent researcher. So I think that transition from a postdoc to start becoming an assistant professor and climbing up the ladder, there is a kind of a gap, you know. You're not someone that you can hold on to anymore. Because as a postdoc, you're still kind of, you know, you're a senior PhD student without having the fear of crossing a finish line. You know, that's probably another way of putting it. What is a postdoc, at least in my point of view. Someone may disagree, but that's like kind of similar thing. They don't load you with different responsibilities. That's probably good sort of a segue to the second question. Your responsibilities undergo radical changes when you become an assistant professor. Your teaching duties all of a sudden becomes a big part of your time. You need to spend time. It's probably the first time you're in the front line. You are in the on the stage teaching. It's everything up to you. You're gonna be evaluated. Things matter if you are on a probation, on a tenure track. Then the pressure of the research whatsoever comes alongside these teaching related things. You also become part of, you're dragged into some admin activities. I remember I was organizing our Christmas dinner because they said the newest part of the team should organize the Christmas dinner. That comes with some timing, you know. I was like checking the restaurants here in Bath. I was going to, you know, but you should do these things because you're part of the community. Oh, another question. Okay, thank you so much. Do you think we need to mention the need for skilled worker visa at the beginning of the hiring process? I think Kerem is nodding because probably
Yes.
you're more familiar. Okay, I think
Yes.
if it's a straight yes.
This is actually one of the questions I don't think I ever seen an application form where you are not asked about it anyway. So, and you can't lie about that. But just keep in mind, you do not need to worry about it because universities automatically just basically gets these visas sorted. I mean, they have what's it called, license from the government. So it's not like like if you look for an industry job, it's more of it's a different matter. But for academic jobs, you don't need to worry about that. You just say, yes, I need it, and that's that.
Yeah, so I think I would just, if there are any other questions, I'm happy to take. Otherwise, please reach out to me as a part of the network advice that I had to you. I'm expecting some of the LinkedIn invites potentially, probably after the talk. See if you're gonna get connected with me. I'm joking, but yeah, this is like don't miss any opportunity to get connected with folks.
Yep. I'll just basically second that as well. So just
Excellent.
feel free to connect.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have a quick question.
Absolutely.
So you talked about the network side of things, and some of that is about helping you, like people that you know who might be able to help you in terms of getting the job and that sort of side of things. How much does it matter from like seeing a sort of research collaboration network, and how much does that help you get a job as opposed to so yeah, just a different view of it.
Look, it was absolutely twofold. I would say having the network that I managed to build with here with the University of Bath, and more specifically with Professor Mike Lewis, helped me a lot. First, it helped me to navigate me through publications at the Journal of Operations Management. So I had my PhD supervisor and Mark Lewis, both of them helped me tremendously to navigate in publishing in an elite journal like JOM. So I would say it was a direct contribution in my research, having that publication, which became probably one of the key things in my CV to be able to navigate in the application process. And then secondly, when you build a network, when you manage to work with someone else's beyond your university, the very minimum outcome is that if you have a good relationship with that person or with those folks, is that they become a good reference for you. This is a very mechanistic, materialistic view on building a relationship, which you should not look at it from this perspective, because it goes way more beyond that. That is, you get the reputation. Don't forget that we are in a very small community. So if people see someone who you used to be or you used to work with in a conference elsewhere, somewhere in a gala dinner, and then say, hey, by the way, how is this Omid? I mean, he's applying in our institute. This is an easy guy. Can we go lunch with him, etc.? I mean, is he how does he feel like being a colleague like Omid? So then you automatically sort of, I would say maybe implicitly, your network is impacting the view of folks that you have applied for their institute. So I think it's so related, and I think in this era, I would say having the network and maintaining a good relationship with people is a key.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course.
So we've got 5 minutes left, so I'd like to open it out more. So if you got just broader questions, and then we can offer them to both Kerem and Omid to hear their perspectives.
Exactly.
I have one question, if I can ask.
Go for it.
Yeah, so operations research or operations management is generally spanned across like different departments. So is there any specific strategy that you follow, or like should the strategy differ if you're applying to a position within the let's say Department of Business versus Department of Mechanical and Industrial Engineering versus Department of Computer Science, something like that?
Kerem, maybe you are more experienced in this.
I think the main thing to point out there is I wouldn't worry about it too much, but sometimes you have a preference. For example, if I were more of a computational optimization person, I would obviously be more personally interested to moving into a computer science department, whereas I'm much more interested in, say, application or maybe just even pretend to be an operations management person like Omid, I might actually say I'm gonna move to a business school. So, I think it really depends on your interest. I mean, I was in an industrial engineering department where I got my PhD. Then I moved to a maths and stats in Melbourne, and I'm in business school right now. So I did all three, engineering. I didn't do computer science, okay, hands up. But other than computer science, I did all three. And then you are a bit like fitting everywhere. So I don't think you should particularly worry about it. If the job fits you, if the group fits you and so on, I think you are fine. But just like I said, if you are much more, say, theoretical person, you might prefer to go to a school of maths rather than a business school. Or if you are much more interested in working with companies, businesses, etc., maybe then a business school is more attractive to you. But I would say that's more of a preference rather than, oh, you will be denied the job just because of this.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay, are there any final questions? No, okay, didn't think so. So in which case, I'd just like to say thank you very much to both Omid, Kerem and Zella beforehand. They offered some really useful insights into it and some really interesting perspectives as well. So thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for everyone else who has attended. I hope it's been a useful session for you as well, and I hope to see you at a future ECR network event.
Thanks for organizing, Luke.
Thank you so much, everyone, and good luck with your next career, the next move in your career.
Yep, exactly.
Cheers.
Good luck.
Bye.
Bye-bye.